So welcome everyone. My name is Scott Levkoff. I am the creative director of Mystic Midway, Midwayville, and I was the creative director of Battery Acid, the psychedelia-infused spectacle that we had here on Halloween. First off, I would like to thank the folks here at the Battery. Yes, thank you so much for hosting this evening, addressing the very serious issues now facing our creative communities. So tonight, Will here is going to moderate a panel discussion with members of W.A.B.A, we the artists of the Bay Area, diving into some of the excellent work being done to help preserve our community spaces and what is being done to prevent the extinction level event now taking place. All right, so tonight is also an invitation. It's an invitation to really tune in and find ways we can connect with one another and to activate our collective genius in service of nourishing creative community and community spaces, so essential to preserving our cultures here in the Bay, because these spaces are everything. These spaces are creator culture laboratories, alchemical laboratories for unlimited possibility. They're sanctuaries for nurturing culture, for artists create culture, right? Times like these is when creatives spring into action, generating solutions and making engagement appealing. And of course, incubators for new artful technology. So with that, I'd like to put you in the very good hands of our moderator, Will Chase, who will introduce all these lovely folks here and the amazing work that they're doing. And passing it over to you. Give it up for Will Chase.
Thank you, Scott. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you really very much for coming out tonight. It's good to see a good audience here about this important topic. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Will Chase. I am the founder of We the Artists of the Bay Area, together with Tyler Hansen, and I'll talk more about that. I was also the Minister of Propaganda for Burning Man for 13 years, and I'm the head of communications for Obscura Digital, a creative agency here in the city. I'll talk more about the formation of We the Artists after these guys introduce themselves. So I'll start with Ron here on my right.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, hi, I'm Ron Vidal. I'm an engineer, I'm a firefighter, I'm a fabricator, I'm a contributing artist, I'm a civic leader, and I'm a board member of NGOs. I've been on build crews for 10 large-scale Burning Man art projects and public art projects in Oakland, notably Catacomb of Veils, La Victrola, Eternal Return. I've worked with Peter Hudson, Marco Cochran, Laura Kimpton, Dan Sullivan, and Rachel David. I have an interesting spot at Burning Man. I'm 10 years on the fire department of Burning Man. In the last 3 years, I was the commander of the fire department operations for all the large burns, including the Man in the Temple burn, as well as all the other artist burns on Thursdays and Fridays. Got pretty good at giving briefings to BLM, law enforcement, about what our activities are going to be and how we're going to establish unified command if we end up in large-scale events. On the civic side, I've been engaged both in government affairs, public policy. I've testified in front of Congress, 3 public utility commissions, and I've sat on 12 different federal, state, and local task forces, commissions, and grant-making operations. Been on 5 nonprofit boards, usually on finance and governance boards, and committees, capital campaigns, led fundraising, and I've been 30 years in critical infrastructure as an executive.
Ron's a really tough act to follow. No, I mean, it just goes to speak to how stacked our team is here at We the Artists of the Bay Area. My name is Liana Sananda Giluli, and I operated a creative space out of Los Angeles for several years. I'm an art curator, and I've worked in event production and festival production for many years. And I'm also an activist, lifetime activist on many different issues, from anti-war to drug policy reform to arts advocacy. So yeah, I'll just keep it short and sweet.
John Sarriugarte. Artists, I've worked with SRL in the beginning, lived the warehouse life, done the craziness. I've been in Oakland for 20 years. I've been on the West Oakland Commerce Association for 15, 20 years, I can't even remember. Very involved with local Oakland politics, sat on the mayor's committee for housing, and now sitting on the new mayor's committee for fire and safety. I'm a landlord at the Kraftwerks building, been involved with Burning Man since 1995. You probably know a lot of my art cars, the Golden Mean, the snail car is the most famous one of. very active and really want to see this community survive. Thank you.
He's a tough one to follow, too. My name's Lara Edge. I am a small business owner in West Oakland. Our business makes creative, interactive pieces for events and conventions, and I'm also a resident of West Oakland. I've also been a dweller of illegal warehouses. Yeah, so, yeah, a lot of us have. And I got involved because this has a direct impact on my business, on my friends, my community. My business pulls from the creative community in the Bay Area. So when they're gone, what do we do?
Great, thank you. A quick hand for our panelists, please. Thank you. I'm dumb and lucky enough to know these people. Let me give you a little background on how this has all transpired before we get going. So on December 3rd, the morning of December 3rd, I woke up and I looked at Facebook and I saw the news of what happened the night before, which was that the Ghost Ship warehouse, which we were all familiar with actually, had caught fire during a party, and in that tragic event, 36 people lost their lives. And at that point, we didn't know what the extent of the tragedy was, but we had a good sense. But one thing we did, what became very clear, was that there was going to be a reaction. We saw the writing on the wall. And I got in touch with my friend Tyler Hansen, and we've been doing cultural collaborations over the years in various forms. And we were chatting about it on Slack, and we realized that what was going to happen. We realized that the creative community was in peril. We knew that the fire inspectors would get really paranoid and nervous, and we're going to start looking at the places that they might have let slide in the past. We knew that the landlords were going to get paranoid and nervous about the state of their own spaces, and they were going to start to react, and they were going to either be opportunistic or paranoid and get the artists out of their spaces and potentially, find somebody more lucrative to put in them in the case, or just to cover their own butts. And we saw the tenants panicking with suddenly their businesses, their livelihoods were in threat. And we reacted to that. We decided that we realized very quickly that we needed to launch a campaign in an effort to thwart that and stand up for the creative community. And so we quickly created a Facebook group, as you do, because this is the 21st century, and so when anything happens, you create a Facebook group. We recruited some people into that, and we started a Slack channel. And in the heat of the moment, imagining ourselves manning the barricades against the oncoming hordes, we named ourselves "We, the Artists of the Bay Area," which is something that you scream from behind a barricade. We would live to regret the name, but that's another story. Within 2 weeks, we had assembled 50 subject matter experts from within our own networks to work across about a dozen working groups to address all of the facets of this issue. Everything from building inspections, like of actual buildings of people who are in trouble, to support groups, to policy, government relations, communications, website development, social media, the whole rigmarole. To basically, we created an entire company effectively within 2 weeks, and we had 50 people on our team. Within 3 weeks, we had 75 people, and a whole organizational structure. We had a constitution, still do. We have a leadership. We have functional teams. We have organizational structure. This is my particular expertise, is pulling that kind of thing together in short order. And we happen to have, because we live in such a fantastic community and connected creative community, we had the ability to tap some of the best minds and best resources to bring to bear on this problem. So that's why these folks were some of the first people that we brought on board, and that's why we had the great benefit of having this kind of expertise, and this is why we have them here on stage with us today. So we, the artists of the Bay Area, did a lot of community organizing, community management, a lot of press, a lot of media relations. We did a lot of work with the Oakland City government and San Francisco government, working with other organizations that are there. We also realized that there was going to be a lot of organizations that were going to come up and spring out from this, because everybody's passionate. In the Bay Area, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting an activist. And everybody, right. And so one of the things we wanted to make sure to do was to have everybody not duplicating efforts, not working at cross purposes, and ideally speaking with one voice. So that was part of our mission from the outset, was to do that. So we've accomplished a lot in a short amount of time, and we did. And unfortunately, there's only so much you can really do about this. Our fears on that morning of December 3rd did come true. We watched as our friends were systematically evicted from their spaces, and it was horrible to watch. And we did everything we could, and we continue to. But we are advocating. One of the things that we're doing as a group is organizing and advocating with the city to adopt policies and new systems that will keep pace with the economic and social reality that's happening on the ground, which has been the problem all along. So one thing I want to make very, very clear here before we start is that the picture that was painted initially was that this was about artists. And I recognized very quickly, I'm a communications guy, I recognized very quickly that this being painted as an artist problem was going to be a failure, was going to be a big problem for us, because it's way too easy for people to just write off artists. The way it was portrayed and the way it could easily be conceived is that these are just artists trying to throw a party, and you're harshing my mellow and you're not letting me throw my party. And there is an aspect of that, but as one small piece of the pie. The reality is that this is a much bigger problem, and it's actually a very critical issue for the Bay Area. This is the creative community. This is not about artists. This is about the creative community, and that encapsulates a larger constituency, and that's much more economically and socially and culturally important and essential and viable to this community. And it's really where our roots are from. If you look back at the 80s, 70s and 80s, there was garage startups. Right, garage entrepreneurs was the hallmark of the Bay Area economy and our culture, and what we became known for in the world. So, Apple started out of a garage. HP started out of a garage. You can go down a list, right? That's because back then real estate was cheap. Anybody could get a garage, right? And warehouses were all filled with manufacturing. Flash forward to today, housing is ridiculously expensive. You can barely afford a garage, let alone a house. The manufacturing base has largely been decimated, so suddenly these warehouses are available. So where does that same entrepreneurial, artistic, creative class go? They go where the spaces are cheap. That's just the way things go, right? So they've moved into these warehouses, into these spaces. The zoning never kept up with it. The policies never kept up with it. And so you end up in a situation now where there's a lot of people in unsafe spaces, and they're staying underground because it's easier and safer and better, safer in the sense of not being evicted, less risky, I should say, to stay underground and to throw your events and stay underground. It's a pain in the ass, frankly, to get an event permit. So what do you do if, they're going to have their events anyway? You go underground and you do it. And this is the kind of thing that can happen. Unfortunately, it took something like the ghost ship tragedy to bring that to the fore and really force the issue of people to really pay attention to the issue. So we're here to try and address that issue. Because it's more than just the artists. It's these are the entrepreneurial class, right? These are your innovators, your makers, your do-it-yourselfers, your builders, your small businesses like Lara's, as well as your artists, which is again the cultural underpinnings of this region and really a part of our history. There's more artists in Oakland per capita than there are in any other city in the country, which is notable. And we saw that Oakland was going to be has the potential to create a model for the rest of the country and other cities and other artistic communities and creative communities. They're going to face this same kind of problem, because we did see the fallout happening across the country, not just here. It's most acute here because of our particular situation, but it's a national problem. And one of our goals is to create a model and a toolkit that other people can adopt and learn from and support themselves to maintain and support safe spaces for the creative community. So, does that all make sense? That's where we are. So it's been a hell of a lot of work. We all have day jobs, and it's been a big challenge. So mad respect to all these folks on the stage and the other folks in We the Artists who have been working so hard to make this stuff happen, despite having other things to do. So with that, I think that's about the background I want to give, and I'd love to start the conversation with our panelists now. Lara, let me start with you, if I could. You are a small business owner. You work out of American Steel warehouse over in Oakland, which houses how many businesses over there, would you say?
You know, there are about at least 100 tenants, and it's about 6 acres under one roof.
Right. So tell us. So you own a small business, doing creating. You can tell us what you create, because I don't have to. And how has this affected you specifically?
Okay, so basically, my business started. I have a business partner, and the two of us started a business in American Steel because it had cheap rent, and we could start from 2 spaces and then expand or contract as needed, which is perfect for a business when you don't know how fast you're going to grow. And there's a whole creative community within it already. So if we needed CNC services, there are a couple of different providers we could go to within our own building. If we needed to borrow tools, the tools were there, or people we need to hire as contractors. So it was a really good fit for us to start our business. And like I mentioned, my business is called Sheet Metal Alchemist, and we occupy this strange niche where we make these. We fabricate in steel, wood, other things, but we also incorporate a lot of electronics and interactive components, largely for conventions and conferences. So we're really, we don't fit in any one category. We're a fabrication shop, we're an electronics shop, we're a CAD powerhouse shop, right? So we have all these various needs for types of space. And so American Steel really fit for us when we first moved in. It was purchased recently by a group of investors who've decided they want to keep it as an artist space. They had their own interpretations of the code, and so we had to do things like take the roof off of our office. So how do we have phone calls with clients and do electronics when there's crap in the air and angle grinders going off? We're still figuring that one out. And then after the fire, the very next day, the new building owners and some private inspectors went through the building and decided to do everything even past what's required in code, but not really thinking about how do you use the building. Like we have to pull trucks into drive aisles. There are all these different components that go into having an industrial arts business, and it just felt like it just swung so far the other direction, and it has cost us so much money, I can't even tell you. Some of the things have been great, as in we have emergency egresses and man doors we didn't have before, so I'm very thankful for those things. Some of it's just been a little bit too far off. And also, we've been looking for other warehouses to rent for a while now as our business grows. We need bigger contiguous space, and we are already running into problems with low inventory. And then after the fire, basically our broker said nobody wants to rent. If you do anything related to the arts, nobody wants to rent a warehouse to you because it's a liability. Doesn't matter if you have great insurance, if you have all these things. So now we're looking at the city of San Leandro. We're looking at leaving Oakland because they have incentives to move us there. That's a really tough one for me to swallow. I mean, I can walk to work in 10 minutes. I love my neighborhood. I love my community. I've been there for quite a while. And a lot of us are faced with this. So we're not just artists, we're small business. And this is happening to other small businesses. And it's like I said earlier, we hire contractors as well to do a lot of our work. Well, when the contractors leave, there goes the ecosystem. And so that, I guess I'll wrap that up by saying that much like people talked about Silicon Valley as the place to be for tech because of the ecosystem, that's what we're really talking about with the creative community here is, yeah, you can go paint in a garage or a closet somewhere, but it's, we're all part of this greater system. It works when we're all together and in a physical place.
So speaking of physical spaces, John, you've been investigating a lot of warehouses. John is really well connected in the Oakland artist community and does a lot of work with W.A.B.A and on his own prior to this, helping folks out by going into their spaces and understanding where they're at and seeing what they need and assessing them in a way that won't put them on the radar, right? Give them the opportunity to make those changes that they need to make before someone comes in and inspects them and red tags them. John, can you talk about the state of the kind of spaces that you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, we had met with Libby's office almost a year ago now. So a lot of these issues had come up and been discussed and basically dropped because we didn't know what the solution was. We definitely knew there were spaces out there that weren't safe, that weren't being inspected, that didn't, have the quality of life that they needed. But what do? If we inspect them strongly, they're all going to get shut down. If we ignore them, they're unsafe. So it was a catch-22. So I definitely had examples in my mind as we met of the people that I know and the spaces that are around me. I have about an acre building in West Oakland. I don't have to walk more than a block to find friends and live workspaces and workspaces and creative spaces that are right around me. So it was pretty easy after the fire to immediately walk across the street and check in, what's going on over here, what's your situation, what are your landlords thinking, and start to look at those spaces with a landlord's eye. I have to go through my tenant spaces now, and you can't build with 2x4s and cardboard. You can't make rooms like that. And you constantly have to remind people of that. Extension cords, a lot of low-hanging fruit as we inspected the spaces, and a lot of naivety about how to make spaces safe. Typically, everybody goes to the back corners and puts their bedroom back in the corner because that's the quiet space, and the space right in front is either workspace or performance space. So a lot of egress issues is what we found out right away. Building structures, low ceilings, no sprinklers, stacked situations where you've got somebody down below and another person above, again, all built out of 2x4s and plywood. So a lot of it was fairly easy to go in and say, okay, let's get rid of the extension cords. What can we do in an afternoon to solve these issues and really get things safe quickly? On that note, I've had 2 past tenants that were fire extinguisher companies, so it was easy for me to make just a few phone calls and get, 200 extinguishers and 400 smoke alarms. Part of that came from the mayor's office. Some of it was from donations from the community, and we handed out all of that stuff. So it was probably $5,000–6,000 worth of gear that went out that first week, and then a week after Christmas we did another round of that. Again, educate as we did that. We had Dave X from Burning Man bought this wonderful setup that lets people practice with fire extinguishers. So get your extinguisher, talk to you about where to put it and how to use it, get your smoke alarm, walk across the parking lot, and actually learn how to use it. My daughter now holds the record of 5 seconds to put out the fire.
She is so fast with the fire
I know,
extinguisher.
it was
It's
amazing.
crazy good.
And I want to note that the fire department came out in
Yeah.
support of that event and actually helped people determine where to place this equipment inside their spaces, and was very open and very receptive. And that's really remarkable and important. There's a huge fear and a huge disconnect with the creative community and the establishment. And so we're trying, that's like a big part of our mission, is to build those bridges and make those connections, because we all want the same things. We all want our community to be safe, so.
And it was really touching to have the firemen come up to me afterwards, and I'm tearing up already, and just thank you so much for letting us help in a way that's meaningful and really makes people safe. They were really appreciative, and the artists as well. And it was interesting to see the community that came out in West Oakland that wanted these extinguishers. It was not what I expected. I mean, we had the punk rock kids, but we also had the little old lady grandma who had somebody living down in her basement. And I mean, it was just a really great cross-section of Oakland. So it was really great to have that connection with people directly and to have them, like you said, here's a fireman. They're people just like you. It was a wonderful situation. So I think I feel like we've gotten past the complete freak-outness. We did a whole lot of things, outreach to landlords and just say, let's talk about this. I'm a landlord too. I'm freaking out. Here's what I've done. Here's what you can do. And calmed people down. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We still have landlords that are going to take advantage of this. We still have tenants that don't want to talk about it. I mean, similar to what got Derek in trouble with the ghost ship, I still have those people out there. So, we're working through these things one at a time to get to the next level. I really feel like the ultimate goal of where I'm at with the city and where the city's at is compassionate compliance. So we do want to come to a place of compliance and safety totally that we all agree on. And I think between here and there, I want to do that slowly. I want to do it thoughtfully. I want to have an open conversation where we can change the rules. With that compliance doesn't have to be what's on the books right now. It can be something different. We can imagine a better way that fits our needs much better.
Yeah, and what we realized quickly was that this was going to be an issue that was only going to be resolved by everybody coming to the table. Right, we're not going to be able to stand outside and hold protest sign and solve the problem. It's going to require all the different parties that are affected by this to come to the table and compromise. So that's the landlords, that's the tenants, that's the city. And I'm wondering, Ron, if you can talk about the policy side and how the city has, particularly the city of Oakland, and this is somewhat a San Francisco crowd, so we can address how San Francisco is different than Oakland right now, but look at where Oakland is in terms of their evolution of their thinking around zoning and policy.
Yeah, so it's super interesting because has anybody been to the Crucible here? Right? What's cool about going to the Crucible? It's in West Oakland. Mm-hmm. You know why it's cool? Because when you drive there, you drive past the western terminus of the Transcontinental Railroad. You drive past the biggest bridge built in this United States in the last 50 years. You drive past was the original port, which was the gateway to the Pacific. You drive past gigantic amounts of infrastructure that were military bases. That you drive past all this stuff. And yet you can put that kind of facility just about any place else. Right? It would have a very different feel if it was, I lived in Nebraska for a little bit, so if it was in the middle of Nebraska, it would have a very different feel because of the legacy, because of the ecosystem, and because of the historical content of where it is and what happened there and what's about to happen there. I mean, to me, it's a very palpable thing when you drive over there. And so here we have this amazing inventory that like very few places have, right? I mean, I've worked in the tech business for a lot of years, and I break the world up into 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional. See, when I pull out an app, this is the 2-dimensional world. And when we go to West Oakland and places like that, that's the 3-dimensional world. And I think we're losing that. And yet we have this amazing inventory of things that was so specific to the place and the people that work there and the things that got built there. And so, as Will mentioned earlier, this idea that manufacturing jobs have left and gone someplace else. But now what we're left with is this amazing inventory of structures that folks like John and Laura, and I'll give a shout out to some of our friends we've been able to gather up here from the architectural and professional services community that are in the audience with us today. I don't know if you'd want to be mentioned, but sure. Tom Dolan, amazing resource, wrote the Live Work Ordinance in Oakland 20 years ago. Tyler Hansen, another amazing resource, helping us to organize our community. This is the people who have this deep sense of place. And so what's super interesting is that the way government works is under Title 24 of the California Code of Regulations is California Building Code. And in the building code is the California Fire Code, and Mechanical Code, and Electrical Code, and Plumbing Code, right? And then by each municipal government is responsible for adopting the code and making amendments if they choose, right? And so in a lot of ways, the cities have the responsibility legally as the authority having jurisdictions to both, by their own motion as a council, to pass a code and then enforce a code. So what you have is this like misalignment right now between what these spaces could be used for and then what the actual code says, right? And so there's been pioneering work in live-work ordinances to try to bridge the gap, which is, can we repurpose these spaces in a way that is meaningful for today without tearing them down so they look like the buildings of today, right? And so, municipal governments, and this is part of the thing we've learned by looking around the country on this, is that each local government has a different form of government. Oakland happens to have a strong mayor and executive branch, and a city council and a city administrator that runs all the departments. Other municipal governments operate very differently. And so trying to help the creative community gather its voice, frankly, to go talk to local government, to advocate for themselves to local government, to talk about what that means. And the other side, and that is that I often feel that like some of the creative community has almost operated like in the dark, in the underground, as almost as an immigrant community. Mm-hmm. Seriously, it's like, oh, I would like to know about that, but the person I have to ask is the person who's going to bust me or evict me or red tag my building. And so what we've learned along the way here is that when you go out and you get in between that, right, and you could pass along great information to people. I haven't had anybody who said, oh yeah, hey, I know I need more fire extinguishers, but it's going to be a pain. Everybody's like, no, just tell me what to do, and I'd like to do it, and I'd like to do it in a thoughtful way, right? And so we've been able to get in between that by having a program where we as a community have basically picked up, like, from our own initiative to make our community safer. Now, I'll make a difference between safe and code compliant, because like I could give you a copy of the 2016 California Fire Code. It's about this thick, and there's and it's a very well thought out. And I know people who are who are voting members on the committee, both at the California state level and at the National Fire Protection Association. So we're trying to balance off how do we make sure that's safe and code compliant. I think the city of Oakland did a great job. Mayor Schaaf issued an executive order. For those who are interested, read it. It's online. It's Executive Order 2017-1, which I think was also symbolic because it was the first executive order that the mayor issued in 2017. New year, new page. Let's start fresh here. And it talks about a path towards compliance, because ultimately that's where we'd like to get people relative to operating in safe spaces. But first and foremost, we've all walked around in lots of buildings and just help people out. Like just that irrespective of whether it's in section 9.3.2.7, let's just get people to operate safely and sustainably. And so it seems to me that what as a creative community we need to do is simultaneously work with the folks in the creative community to be the kinder, gentler interpreter, the compassionate compliance that John discussed, but then also to gather up our voice and go to local government and state government and talk about the things the creative community should be valued for and what it does for both the economic and the cultural fabric of the place. Otherwise, the place is going to look like every other place. And so hats off to the mayor's office and in the face of a terrible tragedy. I mean, the reason that the code book's this thick is because there have been previous tragedies that have influenced the code, whether it was the Triangle Weight Shirt factory fire in New York around the turn of the century, or it was the Rhode Island nightclub fire, or everything in between that influences. We learn, right? I mean, I can tell you what, Oakland Fire Department's hurting too. Like, we don't go out as firefighters to get overwhelmed. We don't go out to lose, right? And that was a tough situation. And so there's so many aspects, so many layers of all this. But what I read out of the executive order relative to what you mentioned on policy is that the mayor has set forth some specific things. They want to go and take a look at a redesign of the special permit process. They want to go and take a look at a phased-in approach towards compliance with all the people, both landlords and tenants and the city at the table. They want to go and develop a community risk reduction plan, and also look at an audit of the Fire Department Inspection Bureau against NFPA 1730, which is a national standard for this. And they want the city attorney's office to come out and put together a frequently asked questions list so we could explain what this stuff means in English to people who aren't experts in engineering or architecture or construction or code compliance. So I think these are all really, really positive steps. But you know, these are the first steps, right? Because you know, we live in a very expensive area, and the creatives, we're not the only people facing this, right? For those who are interested, go read New York's Loft Law from 1982. Very similar thing, right? Which is like you had very similar inventory in Brooklyn and in Red Hook and various neighborhoods around there. So that's a long-winded way of saying that we got a lot of work to do and we got to roll up our sleeves, because this is the stuff that matters to us. That's why you're here tonight. You want to hear about, you know, how do we preserve the stuff that matters to us? And that's why we're doing the work. This is all pro bono work right here, right? And only because we care a lot.
And one of the challenges we face right now is that one of the sayings I love is never let a good crisis go unused to waste. And this was one of those situations where, like, suddenly there was, to my amazement, and I think to our amazement, there was political will that became apparent that this, both City of Oakland and City of San Francisco weren't just going to like crack down as I fully expected them to just knee jerk. There was a political will to make some positive changes. So we really took the opportunity to strike while the iron's hot and impact as much as we could. And again, there are other groups besides ourselves who are doing the same thing to try and impact that policy while the attention is on this. Because I also know from my experience in communications that people's attention is going to turn away very quickly, and it already has. Like the level of evictions and people that are at risk has reduced, and the pace of play has slowed down. Thank God for my workload. But we also recognize that the political momentum was going to decrease as well. But so one of the things, we've got a new presidential administration in office that everybody's paying attention to now. So that's the hot news item for the next probably 4 years. So how do you keep the attention on something that the underlying problems of this are not going away? So how do we continue to keep that pressure up? And that's why we want to try and continue this conversation and make sure that this doesn't get lost in the weeds. Liana, can you talk about I mentioned that this problem is particularly acute in Oakland because of our particular context, but we're seeing this problem nationally as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been contacted from groups in Baltimore to Miami to Los Angeles and all across the country. The response to this has been to just shut places down. And I want to make a distinction. It's mostly the landlords that are having the fear. It's not the cities going in. It's the bureaucratic. Everyone knows that our cities are overloaded and don't actually have the manpower to go out there and do this mass shutdown. So we're seeing fear. The landlords are turning themselves in and asking for. And so we're seeing a lot of that happen. And so a big part of what we're doing is creating a resource packet. And if you go to our website, we have a whole list of resources for DIY spaces, and it's super basic things from how to make your party safer or how to make your event space safer, all the way down to there's some groups that are putting together. It's incredible to see the creative community come together and support each other, from everything like voluntary inspections like you gentlemen are doing, to people donating time who are therapists, right, for those who have been affected. So one of the things that we just launched is with partners in Los Angeles is the We the Artists of Los Angeles chapter. So, and now we're starting to see, and we're in talks with people in New York as well. And so now we're starting to see a national artist advocacy group form together and stand together and say, we matter. And this is part of the opportunity that we have right now, is to actually stand up. We've been existing in the shadows, in the gray area, in the corners of society, and we have not been able to stand up and declare our space in society. And so now we're coming together and we're saying, we matter, we bring culture, we bring innovation, we're incubators of new ideas, and we're carrying the future. And so we're coming together with that voice, and we're standing up and we're saying, we want to work with our governments and with our cities, and please sit with us, break bread with us, let's find a way to do this together. And it feels like this big, coming out together opportunity. And so that's something that is really powerful, and that's more of what we're building towards. And with the work that we're doing in Oakland, we're hoping that anything that we create there can be replicated in other municipalities. So that's the standard that we're hoping to set with that.
Yeah, John, could you talk about the you were mentioning earlier the zone in Oakland, the few blocks there that can be zoned in a different way?
Yeah, so one of the big questions for me, I said earlier, I've been working with a group, W.A.B.A. It gets crazy, W.A.B.A, W.A.B.A.
Is that a rap song?
I know, it's about only rap. So we've been trying to protect, did I just turn myself off? Industrial zoning from development. I do not want to see more of the workspaces. I'm an industrial artist, I do blacksmithing. I need my industrial space, and it doesn't exist outside of cities. So I want to protect that from overdevelopment into condos. So I'm struggling with this, trying to use these spaces that are illegally, they're zoned commercial or industrial, and people are living in them, and I really don't want to see too many of those change use. I've been thinking about streets in Oakland. MLK is a good one. 25th to 60. It has a great mix of residential, commercial, and industrial zoning all on the same street. I drive down that street or past it on the freeway, and I can look down, and there must be 3 properties per block that are underutilized. These are empty lots, abandoned buildings, abandoned apartments. It would be great to have a group that would go down that, identify the underutilized properties, figure out what's going on with them, why aren't they being developed, and encourage that development. And that's where we're going to get our housing that we do desperately need. That's where we're going to get more spaces for people to sell their stuff. That's where we're going to get more industrial workspaces. And not go into the industrial areas and convert those into, in my mind, inappropriate uses of residential. I mean, we've got factories, there's paint booths, there's just stuff. We don't want to put people next to that stuff if we don't have to. And there's plenty of little fringe areas where we can develop that stuff. So that was an idea that I had, and if we can get our city on board and functioning again, we can send the fire department and code enforcement into this new street example, MLK, to see what's going on and how can we, carrot and stick these owners into either develop or move on. If you need encouragement, here's a hefty fine. Here's 10 more, and we now own, as the city, we own your property, and hand it off to a nonprofit to do something with. I would love to see growth in Oakland, and I don't see why we can't have that happen.
God, if I hop in there for a second, this is starting to sound like a very, very exciting part of the new urbanism, right? Which is, this is like urbanism around creative culture, and it's an urbanism around the ecosystems that exist because of the kind of inventory that's there, rather than the kind of inventory that is to be created, right? Yeah. And
one of the things we were talking about last night is we have these empty parcels, and I wanted you to talk a little bit about the idea of getting your industry to come in to develop some of the empty properties that we as artists are a little bit scared of the marijuana industry coming in with a lot of money and buying us all out and throwing us all out. But I would love to have a neighbor take over the empty parcel next to me and develop it. You want to talk about that?
Oh, yeah. I just want to interject here that this is something that I'm facing with my business, because we're looking, like I said, we're looking for a place that we can, a bigger building we can grow our business in. And there are plenty of owners of buildings who are like, well, we don't want to put new power drops in here. We don't want to fix anything because I can get a grower in here. We'll just do it all, and there are no questions asked. So
no, it's I'm sitting kind of like at the apex of a really interesting situation as an artist and a supporter, really big supporter of creative spaces, and also somebody who works in the legal cannabis industry. And so the first thing is that this is absolutely happening in Oakland, without a doubt. I mean, one of the big reasons why we're seeing a lot of spaces close down is because landlords are jumping on the opportunity to evict their artists based on a few small infractions and then get this huge influx of cash from the cannabis industry. People are going to come in and build out these warehouses, and they're coming in with lots of money. So there's several things we can do about that. Right now, we're in a golden moment in the industry where there's not really any institutional players coming in, so you still have fairly decent people coming in and doing this in the space, and there's also people who are supportive of the arts community. I mean, we all know how much the cannabis community and the arts community are together.
Euphemistically speaking, of course.
One love.
It's
Wait, since when?
peanut butter and jelly. They just go together really well. So there's different things that we can do about this. First of all, we can encourage people who build out these warehouse spaces to think further in the future when cannabis is totally normalized, and it's not going to make sense to continue growing in urban spaces. They're going to go out and go build farms with much greater land mass and much greater area. So if they're coming in and building up properties now, they can have an eye to the future, 5-10 years in the future, when they all go and abandon all their warehouses. They can consider what that would look like and how the artist community can inherit those spaces. And additionally, there's no reason why these new businesses coming in can't support and give some sort of percentage, and whether we go through the city and do that, or we just create a nonprofit and encourage these new businesses that are definitely coming to Oakland at a rapid pace right now to do that we can create some sort of support, direct support, and financing for the creative community in Oakland through the cannabis community. So those are two things that I'm hoping to play towards in my work.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there are some interesting models out there right now. If anyone here is familiar with in San Francisco, the Community Arts Stabilization Trust, CAST, right? So CAST is basically works with 501c3 organizations, helps them develop both the financial acumen as well as the operational acumen to get site control for their space, which could mean a long-term lease or it could mean a purchase of the property. But it's
What that means in English is they
Site control.
they help buy the property now while it's still cheap,
Right.
and then they sell it to the nonprofit over the next 5 years.
that was better by a lot. But and so that's an interesting model, but it's like the long range model, right? Because the first couple of properties that CAST developed took essentially 4 years from the minute they started until the tenants moved in as the owners of the property. And so somewhere in between, like, so we've been talking about triaging right now, literally helping people not get evicted, like literally, like on the ground. My OFD fire inspectors are coming like Thursday. Can you come out and walk through the spaces? Tyler and I did a couple spaces, and just help us out. And we're like, sure, yeah, we'll get here's what they're going to ask you, and then here's what you do, and then here's the language you use to tell them, and then speak their lingo, and then everything's going to be good.
And hold their hand.
Yeah, exactly, and show them you're going to know the building way better than they're going to know the building. So if you are knowledgeable about your space and you understand a bit about the code, and you could make their job easy, and you could show them that you're taking real direct, good faith efforts to improve the safety. I mean, measurable, demonstrable progress, right? That's the short game. The long game is trying to figure out like how to end up with owning the spaces, and then on the in between is like, and then what do we do on the in between? Because now we've got contention for these spaces, right, by an industry that has wide scale support at the ballot box in California, and right now because it's still largely a local control issue, both at the state legislation level, but also like, well, what each municipal government will allow or not allow by zoning. So Oakland is friendly zoning for the cannabis industry, and they may not always be, but they are now. And so we've got this triage, short and long game all going at the same time. And that's part of what we think is our role as advocates for the creative community is to basically tell the story, both to local governments as well as to the rest of our broader community, about what's really the lay of the land out there, no pun intended, right? Which is what's really going on the ground out there, no pun intended, and under the ground out there if you're in the cannabis industry. But so, and so also then think about like, how do we, you're starting to sound like urban planners here, right? But it's like, but what do we do, like, relative to making sure that these things are not only preserved and protected, but for a long time, right? And not just the properties, but the people who will inhabit them, the tenants that will create in them. And, you know, I was thinking about it the other day. It's like, so we talked about warehouses versus garages, right? So I mean, literally, if I could take you back in time to Steve Jobs' dad's garage, and we took a snapshot of him and Woz sitting there, I mean, you'd have to have a pretty big imagination to figure out where the trajectory was. So how would you measure the impact of them in a garage in Cupertino versus building a headquarters right now that is for a company that's one of the most valuable companies on the face of the earth? So like when you take snapshots in time to measure stuff, we have to, is this the next Michelangelo, or is this the next person who's going to go and, you know, take another job because their creative career never took off? And that's a hard one, right? But this idea of ecosystem and particular zoning and creating community where community doesn't exist, I think is the right way to go.
And that's, you know, that is the secret sauce of San Francisco, of the Bay Area, is that ability, that magical alchemy that happens from the underground here. So much amazing stuff has emerged from the underground over the years and become impactful in ways that you couldn't even imagine. I mean, Burning Man started off in warehouses like this, and it still lives and thrives and will die by.
I think that was a garage.
Yeah. Burning Man started in the garage.
And they didn't burn it down either. It was awesome.
we didn't burn that one down. We burned all the other garages down. No, but it's a community. The Burning Man phenomenon, the culture in the community is really driven by that underground warehouse community, and most of the art and most of the cultures and the events and the connectivity happens in those kinds of spaces. And this is a $35 million a year event production company that runs literally over 70 events around the world now. And it's a cultural phenomenon that's generated and still is generated from the San Francisco Bay Area, and it still has its roots in this in this environment. The company I work for now, Obscura Digital, started out as a couple guys dinking around in a couple of Soma warehouses, working on domes and projectors, and the next thing you know, it's a $35 million a year business employing 70 people and doing epic events and productions
I hope
around
I'm
the
in
world.
that position soon.
And this is
But we started.
Right.
Yes, yeah. My business partner and I started in 2 different community workspaces related to doing Burning Man projects. So, and now we do work for giant advertising and marketing agencies. We've got 2 pieces at the Super Bowl right now, and it came from this culture.
And groups like yours are, and like Flux Foundation, for instance, which also occupies space in American Steel, has a rule of never take a tool out of someone's hand. Their whole goal is to create community and to teach people how to, learn these skills and take them. And whether it's just, screw around art and throw an event and have fun, wahoo, or turn it into something where it's a vocation or an opportunity for some sort of further development and economic impact is we don't know. And this is the stuff that we're trying to preserve and the kind of stuff that we're trying to save here.
Yeah, it just struck me that in the 2-dimensional world of the thing that lives on these, who has one of these?
No one.
Let me ask an easier question. Who doesn't have one of these? Right, that's what I thought. So in the 2-dimensional world of living here, it'd be called an incubator for how we fund new interesting ideas, right? Where there's an idea but no capital, or trying to form capital, or we're going to build something cool. We're not exactly sure what the revenue model is yet, but we're going to build something cool, and we're building it in 2-dimensional in code, right? And this is just an incubator of a very different type, right? I mean, I hope your business turns out to be just like all these others here, but I can tell you one thing's going to, for certain, which is going to cause it not to happen, is if there's not that ecosystem that you can operate within. Pure and simple. I mean, that's, if there's knowns and unknowns, not to quote Donald Rumsfeld for a second, but there are knowns and then there are unknowns, and then there's unknown unknowns. But I can tell you what's a known here. What known is, if we lose the spaces, we're not going to have the creativity.
So one of the things that I want to make sure that you guys understand as you're sitting here, it's like, how can you help? I'm sure or how can you get involved? How can you participate? And we want to make sure we communicate that. Liana, do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's many different ways. It's mostly about coming together as a community, joining us in our mission, visiting our website. If you have spare time, we have volunteer application forms on our website. We need people with all sorts of different skill sets, and so that's number one. Number two, we have, like we said, we're doing the short-term goals. We're doing things like going in and raising money to help actually provide the resources to get these spaces up to code. And that's the immediate triage stopgap measures that we're working on. And then there's these greater longer term visions, which is shifting the politics around this, changing the building code. So, anybody who wants to help us with that, great. And then there's the longer term vision, which is building out a foundation or a trust or some sort of way to actually own these spaces and actually make these spaces the cultural centers and the fabric, and highlight how they are the fabric of communities like the community in Oakland and the Bay Area. So there's kind of like this whole range of ways to come and get involved, and mostly just connect with each other, connect with us and other groups that are doing this kind of work. And John,
Yeah, and I want to add to that. We've been very focused on the political side of this, getting our councilwoman or man voted for, getting our favorite mayor, et cetera. But what we haven't nurtured is our nuts and bolts people, our firemen, our police, our code. And I would really like you guys to reach out into your community and see if there's anybody that either lives in the Bay Area or lives outside the Bay Area, and encourage them to move here and take one of these positions. Right now, the City of Oakland has a head of planning department position open. I would love to get somebody that sees art in the way that we do to get that position and change the city on a functional level, not just the political. I mean, I'm so tired of going to meetings and talking about what we could or could not do. I want to get the people that are actually making those day-to-day decisions involved. I know we're going to have some new fire positions opening up soon. There's plenty of people in this community, especially in the Burning Man community, who are well-versed in fire department stuff. So I don't know how to reach back out to this crowd, but go on the City of Oakland's site and let's try and fill some of those job positions.
Well, yeah, I would also say, too, that you're part of our community, right? Of all the possible things you could be doing on a Wednesday night, you're sitting here listening to us, right? Because you're part of our community, too. And you have skills. And one thing is always humbles me is when we reach out in our community and we find the amazing amount of talent that's there. So on behalf of us, I want to thank you for having great day jobs and having amazing, mad skills. But we need them because your community needs them. See? And one thing that's different today that's different than this was maybe a year ago, John, when you were like on the mayor's task force for artist workspace or for artist housing and workspace, right? Yeah. Is that there's political will now, right? There's really now it's just not one of another thing, and that's there's just another organization out there looking for money, or oh my God, but now there's like no, this is a moment, and windows open and close, and right now it's open. And I think we need to recognize that and mobilize ourselves because it may not always be open, but it's now.
Yeah. And with that, I would like to open the floor up to questions. I know you guys have skills and interests and stuff like that, but you also have questions. We'd love to answer them.
My name's Ivy. Hi. Thank you so much for coming together and sharing all of this great information. You hit a lot of points that definitely struck a chord with me. I live in the Mission District. I co-manage a co-living space, and I run my own business as a wedding coordinator and wedding planner. I just booked California's first cannabis wedding expo venue.
Right
So
on.
that will be on April 30th at Bespoke at Westfield Center. Really excited. So I like the color gray, and I kind of operate in that area. So we recently got the basement renovated at our house. Our house is just a little over 2 years old, and as I saw this basement renovated, I was like, events, we can do stuff. So especially after the fire, I was like, let's have some fundraisers in there for Ghost Ship, Satya Yuga, Benefit. Started doing those and kind of realized, we're fortunate enough to have a really great relationship with the landlord before, opening the house, which is fantastic. But on my team of co-managers of the house, I'm seeing some resistance. We're a little hesitant, a little shaken up, right? And so I'm trying to figure out what line am I walking with, like, events and as, like, in my space, and, like, as far as, like, donations are concerned and, like, zoning in general is concerned. Like, how can I successfully walk that line? I'm not going to ask about cannabis events in the space yet, but, like, just in general, having that space and being able to have, like, my hookah nights and my karaoke nights and my talent shows and all that stuff.
I can only speak to Oakland because I just don't know what the San Francisco. For us, it's 49 people or under. It definitely simplifies what you can do in the space. You can have a birthday party with 49 people. If once you reach 50, you have to go pull a permit and a whole bunch of things kick in. You also have to be careful with liquor. You can't sell liquor unless you get a permit to do that. I mean, there's a lot of that stuff is fairly simple. You can just go down to the counter and ask them, what do I, just for informational purposes, what do I need to do? I would also encourage you in your space specifically, think about, we used to say safety third. Now my new thing is 3 exits.
Right on.
Or exit through the, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I guess in general, I just
community.
encourage you not to be shy. I mean, I wouldn't go down and say, I want to have a cannabis thing, and here's my address, and here's what we're going to do, and we have plastic sheets, so it's good. But, go educate yourself, and that's what we're hoping. I mean, that is on our list of things to do, is to outline what's that sweet spot. The city doesn't want to share with you what the sweet spot is, and what I mean by that is when you cross from 49 to 50, that's a sweet spot. When when do you exactly need to have sprinklers installed? There is a sweet spot. They want to ask you to just tell your story, and then they'll fit you into what they think. And that's where I really want to get the communication better with the city. It's like, let's have a conversation. And we're, as a city official, I just say, hey, if you go under 49, you don't have to have sprinklers. You don't have to have exit signs. You don't have to have all this stuff. So just get out there and, see what's going on. And I don't know if we have a resource.
Yeah,
we have one right here. So
I'd just like to make a comment on that.
Sure.
In San Francisco, it's a little bit, the sweet spot isn't hidden, but it's in many different places. You've got multiple levels of many different agencies that have impact on what you want to do. And they all have multiple levels of discretion, and they all have their limitations. So figuring out what is appropriate in your space and then working towards the maximum that you can squeeze out of that, and then what modifications you might be able to make with some financial input that could up that and increase the quality of the events you can have there. That's how to figure this one out.
Yeah, I think an overriding thing here too is that government's not in the advice business. Right? I mean, it's a true story, right? I mean, they're in the legislative business and they're in the enforcement business. And so they're generally not so excited about consulting and necessarily giving you advice, because then you would rely on the advice and they're the authority having jurisdiction, and then you could go back to them on that. And so part of this is what we see as an opportunity here. It's like, John said to me, I'm going to explain what he just said in English, right? That's the perfect model here, right? Which is like, all you really want to know is like, tell me in English, what do I do? Just, can you tweet it in 140 characters what I should do, right? Can you Twitter speak it to me what I should do? Because all I really want to know is what to do without stepping in any landmines, right?
I know I should be aware of, we're making documents for what to do if there's an earthquake. Like, these are things that I'm focused on creating, connecting with other co-living spaces in the city, and currently making sure we're actively learning from one another. So I'm kind of coordinating a roommate swap initiative among some of them to really bring it in. But I'd like some of the resources that you mentioned before.
Yeah, sure. There's a bunch up on our website, and whatever you're gathering, we'd love. Artistsofthebay.org is the website, and we have a resources tab. And that's a big part of this. We are seeking to invite anybody else who's creating resources to add it to the website.
The idea is to create a knowledge base, like a community-based knowledge, community-sourced knowledge base. So the more the better.
I guess my question is, I'm on the Arts Commission, so one of our conversations all the time is how do you incentivize people with buildings, landlords and landowners, to not just use the creative community and make a building cool, and then it gentrifies the neighborhood, and then they get kicked out.
Ultimately, it's ultimate ownership is what I think is the answer. That we need to own our own spaces. There's not always the quality of owners, and there's not much you can do about it in this society. I think we talked about this with the mayor's office, and we came up with a few ideas. Taxes, I pay, roughly $50,000 a year in property taxes within Oakland City. So is there some way that I could use that tax to improve a unit or to build it out or something like that? And in exchange, I would have to agree that for a certain amount of time, I don't raise the rent. There's little tiny things like that I think could help. But ultimately, really, if we want to make a big change in Oakland, there are owners aging out right now. We have an opportunity right now. A lot of stuff changed hand in the 80s, and those folks have been land banking, waiting for the next thing to happen. And now after this fire, I've heard a lot of comments that they're done. They want to move on. They want to retire. And I think this is a really good opportunity for us to get our shit together. And I think I really want to encourage artists to understand the power that they have and how unique what we have to offer to our society, how unique that is, and how a lot of people are going on little retreats and climbing mountains and doing all kinds of things to connect, and we have that every day in our lives, and that has power, and that's part of our economy, and I want to help support that.
Yeah, I want to get another question in here.
Hi. Hello?
Sorry, here we go. Yes.
So I got a couple of things. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about the fire and the events that led up to it and the circumstances that made it possible. So a couple of years ago, an underground arts collective that I'm a part of threw a party at the Ghost Ship Warehouse. And Derek, the guy who runs it, freaked out on us. And it almost came to a violent altercation. And I was the first person there on the street standing eye to eye on him as he tried to steal our stuff and steal our bus and scream at us and tell us that we owed thousands of dollars more than he thought we did. And after that point, and this is the point for this context, the collective that I'm a part of decided that we would never do business with him again. And that was an agreement that we made. Mm-hmm. In the year that followed, in the email threads where we do our organization, where we search and search and search through the entire Bay Area to find where we can throw events, those events had run dry. Mm-hmm. And little by little, the question had come up that had previously been unimaginable: what if we go back to Derek? Because it is the only game in town at this point. And we did not go back to him. And the fire where my brother died was not one of the events that my crew threw, but it well could have been, because every single month since that point, the ground has been shrinking out from under us. And so when we come to questions about how it is to make artistic events possible, we really need to look at what it means to say, what is an artistic event? Like, what does it mean to have an art opening, or what does it mean to have a gallery show? But the thing that people died at was an all-hours dance party. all hours dance parties are not things that you can have in officially sanctioned venues. They're not things that you can do in this city in San Francisco. They're not things you can do in Oakland, because in all of these cities, everything has to close at 2 a.m. And until that's no longer the case, everybody who wants to throw an event that is the kind of event that I lived for, that my brother lived for, and that all of our friends, including our friends who died that night alongside my brother, are going to continue dying at, unless it's possible that somebody wakes up and says, oh, there's really no reason under the sun that we have to close up shop at 2 a.m. And until it's possible that we can change those laws and we can change those regulations and we can put our energy into making it so that there are sane and sensible regulations about how people can come together to experience joy together safely, this will only continue happening, because I guarantee everyone sitting in this room that the people that are behind the forces that made that party happen will continue to do it, because it is the only thing that keeps us going. So if anybody here is looking for a cause,
Well,
I'm just going to throw one out there, which is that whatever like backwards, retrograde, Puritan, that's the word, that says that, oh, everybody's got to be, well in bed at 2 a.m., that particular prohibition, more than anything else, is what killed 36 people on December 2nd. Yeah. So if anybody here feels like there's a cause they'd like to get behind, I'm really going to recommend that might be the one. Thank you.
Yeah. So good news, City of Oakland, there's two committees that are going to form right away. Safety and fire is one, and the other one is events. And right away we're going to address that. And I think like the church, there's got to be something in the laws around churches that we can twist.
Yeah, and I just
Not about the same thing.
I'm just really glad you brought that up. That is what I've thrown countless illegal all-night dance parties in my lifetime, and it
Allegedly.
And allegedly. And so I just think it's incredibly important. And I want to note that these laws are so old. I think the name of the law is I know the one in LA references the sock hops. I'm not even joking. And so there's a club in LA called Purple 33. The guy behind that club has tried I've known him for a decade, and for 7 years he's been trying to create a legitimate nightclub in the city of Los Angeles. He has poured $70,000 into the mission. He's gone through all the right channels, and he just keeps getting met with no. And so the day after the fire, he was the first person to get shut down, and he's been holding that space. So I just really respect and appreciate that, and thank you. Yeah.
Ed. Yep.
Well, I guess I should segue because David is my son. I'm Ed Birnbaum, and my wife, Diane, is here. And as David said, we lost his brother and our other son, Jonathan Birnbaum, in the fire. He wasn't performing, but he was a visual projection artist who did VJing all around the world. And his love of his life was doing this kind of thing for small groups, not for the commercial purposes. And that's where he was most creative. I want to speak now because as one of the families that was affected by this fire very deeply, what can come out of it that's good? And I've been talking to a lot of people and looking at the possibilities of basically, of course, as everybody knows, it's the rents and housing costs that are made for unaffordability, and also people living in unsafe places and performing in unsafe places. So I think in terms of long term and doing something that would be really effective, I'm really exploring, and I've been talking to a lot of people, and I've come here to learn a lot about what's going on, to find out what are the ways in which the companies like Apple, Facebook, Salesforce, Google might be able to provide funding to deal with this problem, because in part, obviously, they're partly responsible for it. But on the other hand, this is a wonderful opportunity for doing something that really would have a good impact, would help to revitalize the arts here, and what are the various ways in which they might provide funding. A number of ideas have been here. I'm looking for other ideas as well. I mean, one of the great ideas is to fund, for example, making warehouses where people are living safe and not necessarily up to code, but safe places, and to put pressures on the governments to do this. And so I've been looking and talking to a lot of people today. I mean, for example, today I just spoke to Chris Johnson, who used to be the head of the Arts Commission in Oakland back when Jerry Brown was and he made a very interesting suggestion, which was that one of the things that put AIDS on the map around the world was the AIDS quilt. It was a work of art that really, crystallized and focused people's attention on the problem and what needed to be done. And I would see, a project like this bringing in substantial amounts of funding from these companies, and they have lots of money to do it, where they have the opportunity to not only benefit the local communities, but benefit their own employees, because a lot of people want to live in the Bay Area, the tech community, because of the art and the culture and the parties that David is talking about. And these need to be safe and places, places where this is around. So I would see a project like this as a memorial to the family, the victims of the ghost ship fire, my son and the 35 others who died in it. And maybe there'd be a work of art or some sort of performance art that could really crystallize this and make people focus attention on it. So at this point, we're sort of looking at what's already being done, and are there organizations that are doing it? Can we work with them to build on that, to expand the scope and make something that really works for the long term? A number of things like this that could be done. And then if there aren't any organizations that are already doing this, nonprofits that would be collecting funds, distributing them, and also making sure that the projects and this sort of things are implemented correctly, then what would be a nonprofit that would have capacity in this area that maybe isn't doing it, and that would be interested in doing it? And I think there are wonderful opportunities here, and something that would be a fine memorial. I'm about to start to get in touch with the other families of the victims of the ghost ship fire and get them on board. And I would be very willing, and I would assume a number of the other families, to put a face on this and be spokespeople for it. I see our role as catalysts, really. There are other people who know much more about what to do, like Tom Dolan here, who's an architect who's been working on the warehouse fires, warehouse situations. The people up here on the stage, I mean, I've worked in the nonprofit world, but in a different area. So I would be very interested in people's inputs. And as I say, this has been a very useful meeting for me to find out what's being done and get a much wider view of what's going on. So I'd be happy to get in touch with people afterwards. If you want to contact me, my email address is edwin@peakparadigms.com. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Edwin. Yeah, just a quick answer to that. There are a few different groups that are considering different forms of memorials. Illuminate the Arts is one that's working on something right now. They're the folks that did the Bay Lights on the Bay Bridge. Ben Davis is the lead over there, and we're actually contemplating that same thing. I mean, we're a nonprofit. I didn't mention earlier, but we're a nonprofit. We're a fiscally sponsored nonprofit as well. That was within the first few weeks of our formation. We pulled that off too. So we're gonna be working on something that could be a memorial as well. So yeah, but thank you for what you're doing, and mad props to you and your family. Seriously. Cheryl, back in the back.
Hi. So I'm Cheryl Edison.
Microphone?
I'm loud.
You won't make it to the internet.
Oh, okay. Hi, Cheryl Edison. Hi. This is Minimus. Minimus.
Hi, Minimus.
She doesn't talk that much. Okay, so I wanted to say a couple of things to give an opening for other realities. And so what I want to say is that I believe that there are no villains in this situation. And when we give voice as if there are villains, we are closing opportunities. There are developers in our community who want to create safe space for us and who are creating safe spaces for us. At the Gate 510 and the Factory 510, we hosted all-night parties all the time. And we did it by creating a new revenue model, which was acceptable to the owners of the building, and it was a 1 million square foot property on 24 acres. So we're not talking about a little space where you cram in 49 people. I recognize and I accept that the laws and the zoning and the permitting is screwed up. I know that. I accept that. Everybody has a right to complain. But the thing that I want to ask you to do, and this is my question, which isn't really a question, but my question is, can you find it in your heart to not blame? Can you find a way to let everybody win in this situation? I'm looking for space. I'm talking to developers with hundreds of acres that are interested in giving us space. And we can't open those conversations with "fuck you." So I'm asking you to open your hearts a little bit and consider that good things are possible. And sometimes you have to touch bottom in order to shoot up to the top, where we can go next.
Thank you, Cheryl. It's you. Okay.
It's me. Hello. I am Rosalio Vargas. I am an artist and entrepreneur. I'm actually building schools to create all this stuff to exit. Anyways, I'm really wanting to quote Gene Wilder. You know, we are the music makers and we are the dreamers of the dreams. And since we are the creators, is it common for artists to subscribe to the starving artist or the lack or poor me? You know, like, all these success coaches are always saying, the law of attraction. If you think about it, you pull it into your life. So I just wanted to say what's your put on that from an artist to an artist?
Hell yeah. Power.
Hell yeah.
We have power. We do. And we just have to emanate it. People will come.
We just got to stand up and continue claiming our space and stand tall and proud. And that's very much what we're doing now together, trying to draw together all the artist voices, which is really an impossible task, but we're doing the best that we can to have people feel like they have a unity in a community and an advocacy group that's there on their behalf. That stands for that.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a detriment. No. I don't think being, that sense of lack and being, always, there's power in that, and there's beauty in that, and what you just described as far as like the aesthetic of the parties that we like to go to and the events that not just parties. This isn't just about parties. This is about This is about human connection in a particular community environment.
It is a church.
It's
it
a
really
church.
is. It's where I where I commune with my people.
I go to those places, and I've been hosting those events and going to those events for years because that's the aesthetic that I love, right. And that there's an energy to that is different, that is unlike anything in the mainstream. And it's critically important to a large swath of people who either just have just rhyme with that, or have an affinity with that, or have a particular, they're in other ways marginalized. This is an important feature of this situation. If you're otherwise marginalized, you don't fit into the mainstream, you don't feel connected there. This is where you connect. You connect in the underground. You connect in the between the cracks where no one else is. And there's incredible power in that, incredible power, and it's a matter of us recognizing that and activating on it. And what we're doing as we, the artists of the Bay Area, is trying to galvanize that and get people to understand that and communicate that and do the storytelling for you in a lot of ways, and help facilitate those conversations. As Ron said, to be that glue between and that translator between the artist community and the creative community and the sort of mainstream establishment, because there is a disconnect there, and we are not less than at all in any way, shape, or form. It's different, and different is not worse at all. It's an important part of the overall community and the fabric of what we do.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on what Ed said, which is this is a personal tragedy, right? And of unfathomable. So my heart goes out to you and to your wife and to your son. What I will say is, to put a face on it, is we want to hear those stories. We want to hear. I often think about the StoryCorps project, which is we want to hear the stories of why this matters, right? And so, and we want to hear, both for the community aspect, but also to make sure that we can tell our collective stories. We want to hear those stories so we can tell those stories, right? Tell them to each other for sure, but tell them so we can change policy, so we could change the rules. Right now, we've been avoiding the rules. Now we need to go change the rules. And I think that's the call to arms here.
So with that, I'm gonna wrap it up. I would like to do. Do you want to do one quick question? Quick.
I'd just like to make a comment,
please,
if I could. Coming off of these comments about this power and this important thing that we need to preserve, there really is something direct that we can be doing with it. In terms of praxis of turning this energy into something positive that is going to help us save our spaces and foster more spaces. I'm before the San Francisco Planning Commission on a very regular basis. Scott over here is the only guy that shows up regularly and speaks on Thursday at the Planning Commission public comment period to express the need for these gathering churches, for these places for this worship to take place. Look, public bodies like planning commissions and boards of supervisors and city councils are influenced by the loudest voices in the room. That's what they vote on every goddamn time. So
Can I get a hallelujah?
Hallelujah.
So listen, when there are nightclubs with applications and there are going to be 4 or 5 neighbors there every time that are going to be saying, no, they need to be shutting their music down at midnight. We need to be there in more numbers saying, no, they need to shut their music down at 4. And you will see that those agencies are going to start to issue the permits for 4 a.m. It's just going to start happening if we can motivate a group of people to come make our voices clear and say it loud and be very clear and responsible and not look like we're, the fringe dwellers. We're not the fringe dwellers. We are the core of the culture here, and we should be proud of that.
Yeah, I feel like we have the political will now to be able to make that happen. You're absolutely right. Now's the time to strike while the iron's hot.
I'll just say, I'm going to be over here in the corner. If you want to come and sign up and ask me how you want to join the resistance, I'll get you all lined up, and I can put you to work right away.
This is Tyler Hansen, the co-founder of We the Artists of the Bay Area. Co-founder with him.
Co-founding, that means that we texted people to say we should do something.
Pretty much. That about covers it. So I want to wrap this up by saying thank you guys so much for coming out and spending this time with us, and thank you very much to Stacey Horn and the Battery for hosting us, and it really means a lot to us. And please give a big, warm round of applause to our wonderful panelists, my cohorts in W.A.B.A. We've got Lara, John, Liana, and Ron. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Let's hear it for this guy right here. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a great evening.
All right, thank you, everyone, for coming
Gather
out.
with us.
Stick around, connect, introduce yourselves to one another, mingle, come up and talk to these wonderful folks if you like. All right, thank you so much.